One thing you will find out about Montreal apartments is the walls and the floors are thin. Do y'all remember me talking about wanting to have a brick wall in my apartment just to realize that the walls are so thin? Literally, on Valentine's Day, I heard my neighbors doing the damn thing. Hi, I'm Nyjah, and today I will be taking you on my Montreal apartment hunting process. I want this video to be just a little place you can come to if you want to know the basics of moving out east. I feel like the tips and tricks that I'll be sharing with you can be used across all of Canada, but of course, specifically in the East Coast. There are subtle differences that vary depending on which province that you're in, but for the most part, I've got you covered. I did want to tackle a myth, and that is when you move to Montreal, you need to know French. That is not true. Of course, it is so helpful and will make your time a lot less stressful if you are fluent in French. But I do know of people who have moved to Montreal, done an entire degree or almost all of their degree, and then started taking online French courses like 5 years in. So they've been able to survive in class and, in the city. You might already sense that my French is not very strong. It's just like a little bit busted. But when I first got here, I started using Duolingo Plus, which was helping me with my main greetings, everything like that. That's kind of why I had that like cringy laugh at the end of every sentence, which made me look like a creep. But once I started to get a good feeling of like how to greet people, everything like that, I'm going to start taking a French course where you can set up your schedule to take like a half marathon or a full marathon. So you either do like a certain amount of courses in a month for the half marathon, a certain amount of courses or classes in the month for a full marathon. If you're someone who loves learning, you won't have a problem learning this beautiful language while you are in Quebec. And because I'm living my life in this exciting new city, if you do want to keep up with me and the things that I get up to in Montreal, my Instagram is @Nyjah. The very first thing you want to do when you are thinking of moving is to get a good feel of the neighborhoods. I decided to do a little bit of research on the neighborhoods 2 months before I moved to Montreal, but I also came out to Montreal 3 months before I decided to move here, just to really feel if this city were a place that I wanted to live, because as I said before, moving is really stressful, it's really hard. So knowing that you're moving to a city you like is key, so you can just avoid all of this unnecessary traveling and costs. Unless you're someone who genuinely enjoys like moving city to city, then that doesn't apply to you. But if you're someone who wants to find a place where you can reside for a long period of time, then definitely look at your neighborhoods before you move there. Now there are around 19 boroughs in Montreal, so you have a huge selection of neighborhoods that you could potentially live in. And the most common neighborhood you hear about is the Plateau. This well-known area of the city gives a student-friendly vibe, and the streets are lined up with French cafes, antique shops, and street art. The Plateau is located at the slope of Montreal's famous mountain, the Mont Royal, giving you the option to hike and experience time with nature. Definitely, if you are someone who is younger or in their early 20s, the Plateau could be a perfect place for you. The vibes are really vibrant, really exciting, and there's a lot to see. I also want to let you know that I'm just highlighting a couple of the 19 neighborhoods that I feel are the most family, student, young adult friendly, and generally where majority of people kind of hub into when it comes to Montreal. But of course, I will leave some resources down below in the description box that you can look at so you can get an even better feel if you want to do that extra research. A beautiful part of the city I spent time looking at apartments was Rosemont, Petite. These neighborhoods include two of Montreal's hotspots, which are Little Italy and the Jean Talon Farmers Market. If you decide to live here, you will rarely, if ever, be bored because of how much there is to experience right outside your front door. Another vibrant part of the city is Gay Village. This is a symbolic area for the LGBTQ+ community in Montreal. It also holds the annual Pride Festival, and it is so gorgeous to walk around and see all of the beautiful architecture. And it's relatively close to downtown, which makes it a really convenient area. Gay Village could be a really dope place for you to be and live. If you don't know, now you know. The next iconic location minutes away from downtown Montreal is the Old Port. This is one of the dreamiest locations in Montreal, with cobblestone streets, statement boutiques, restaurants, and cafes. Apartments in this area consist of modern industrial lofts located right above art exposures and Montreal's best city attractions. Another super trendy neighborhood that caught my interest while I was apartment hunting is the Milend. It is filled with so many fashionable boutiques, thrift shops, bookstores, of course, cafes, restaurants. There are parts of the Milend that can get a little bit louder, a little bit more congested, rowdy, if you may. And then there are parts of the Milend that are super quiet, peaceful, family friendly. So I definitely think if you're someone who wants to have the best of both worlds, moving to the Milend would be perfect for you. Speaking of quiet neighborhoods that would be perfect for starting a family, or if you just want peace and quiet to yourself, neighborhoods like Villeray and Outremont would be absolutely perfect for you. These are neighborhoods that have the most beautiful front porches, front gardens, big backyards, and you see a lot of schools, parks, everything like that. What's really beautiful about Montreal and each of these neighborhoods is they have a strong sense of community. For example, Outremont has a sizable Hasidic Jewish community, and I feel like that's why it's so important to know what neighborhood you live in. And depending on who you resonate with, you will definitely find your community. I also think it's important to know whose community you're going into if you're someone who doesn't necessarily resonate specifically with that community, just so you're aware of like what's going on in your surroundings. After doing some research on the neighborhoods, the next thing that you can do is go on to websites. I would suggest using websites like Facebook Marketplace, PadMapper, and Zumper. Those seem to have the best options when I was looking, but you can also look on websites like Kijiji. I did find that they had a lot of commercial real estate and advertisements when you were looking through it, so it got a little bit boring. And then you also start to notice that people tend to repeat listings, like you'll see the same picture for a different location, so definitely be aware of that. Also be aware of the scale used to indicate the size of an apartment in Montreal. It can get a little bit confusing, so I made a quick cheat sheet that should make your apartment hunt a bit easier. What I would suggest is to have a financial plan in place. So I would say having about $8,000 to $10,000 before you move is a good comfort zone, because that money will go fast. The best thing to do is to make two lists, an essential and a non-essentials list. So you can start to write down exactly how much rent is gonna be, exactly how much hydro is gonna be, how much your food's gonna be, and then you can start with your non-essentials, which would be things like stuff to decorate your home and just make it feel a little bit more cozy. Now it's time for you to pack your bags, book your plane ticket, and move. You're thinking of where you're gonna stay right when you get there. You have a couple of options. You could be cost effective and stay with friends or family. You could do a sublet or a sublease, and that is essentially where you are taking over either an entire apartment or you're sharing an apartment with someone, but your name is not on the lease. And one benefit to getting a sublet is you can stay there month to month. Once you find an apartment, you don't have to worry about any contracts, anything like that. You can just go. Or you can stay there, for example, 4 to 6 months, and then say you really like the apartment you're in, potentially you could take over the lease and now your name is going to be on the apartment. And lastly, with places that are being sublet, generally they come fully furnished, so you won't have to be worrying about all the extra things like where you have to sleep or how you're gonna cook your food. Another option is Airbnb. Now, Airbnbs can get pretty expensive, and depending on the situation, circumstances you're in, Airbnb might be a really good option for you, or it might not. I mentioned this back in, I feel like it was my last video or the video before, but I decided to get an Airbnb because since it is the middle of a Panasonic, Airbnbs were significantly less money than they usually are. I was finding a lot of sublets that had multiple people in the apartment, and because of Miss Caronta, I said perhaps not. Actually, when I first got here, Airbnb closed down the option to rent out an entire apartment because they found that people were having parties. So annoying. But I was able to contact someone who put their listing on Airbnb, and then I was able to get it for a price that was even cheaper than Airbnb because they only charged the cleaning fee rather than like the security deposit, the cleaning fee. But of course, do whatever is in your comfort level. If you're someone who feels perfectly fine with doing a sublet with multiple people in the apartment, then that's totally fine. If you're someone who wants to just, you know, do things on their own, be in their own energy, their own vicinity, then that's totally fine. It's time to go back to the websites that I was just talking about. And now what you want to do is, if you see a posting that was just posted, you need to message right away and you need to view the apartment right away. Like either the same day or the next day in the early hours, because these apartments go so fast. When you begin viewing apartments, some listings will only have the option of a virtual tour to maintain health and safety regulations. Make sure the video shows every single corner of the apartment to confirm it's safe and livable. Some people like to scam out here and won't show the truth. Also, I'm highly considering making a series on my channel which showcases some of the most beautiful spaces to live in Montreal and show you what the city has to offer. I'll keep y'all updated on the process once virtual tours start to decline. I definitely think when you are looking at places on Kijiji, you should have a non-negotiables list. We talked about essentials and non-essentials, but now talking about a non-negotiables list is basically the things in your apartment that you must have. So for me, the apartment needed to come with a fridge and an oven. Some apartments do not come with that and you will have to do that on your own. Another thing that I wanted were these wall moldings. When I moved in January, it was actually really hard for me to find an apartment with wall moldings because the prime time to move in Montreal is kind of like spring, summer. So in the winter, no one was leaving their houses. It was really hard for me to find an option. Another non-negotiable that I had was my apartment. I'm gonna sound bougie, I'm gonna sound like a diva. It had to be on the top floor because the walls are thin here. I'm not trying to hear someone above me all the time. I stayed in places where someone was above me and I could hear every single thing that they were doing. So I definitely wanted a top floor apartment with wall moldings and southeast or south facing windows so I can get a lot of light and I can film my videos. I don't use a ring light. I kind of just pray that the sun is on my side. For example, someone else's non-negotiable list could be it has to have an in-unit washer and dryer, which is something that is not as common as you'd think in Montreal. And then it could be something that is your apartment has to be dog friendly or cat friendly. Is it close to any metro stations or bus routes so it can make your living a lot more convenient, a lot more practical for your lifestyle? Non-negotiables, essentials, and non-essentials are the three lists that you have to remember. And this isn't only for moving. I have those lists for a lot of things. Like my non-essentials and essentials list is ongoing forever and ever and ever. I started that last January and it literally changed my life. Now we are at the stage where you have made the big move. You have found an apartment that you really like, but you really want to get it, and it's a little bit out of your price range. That was me. What I decided to do was negotiate my rent. I looked at the neighborhood that I wanted to live in. I looked at other studio apartments around the same square footage, and I started to compare their prices, write them down, and then when I was able to meet up with the landlord, I discussed the prices with him to see if he was able to take a few $100s off, do a nice analysis of the neighborhood, be extremely friendly to your landlord, which I do want to add. Looking for good qualities in your landlord is key because having a bad landlord could make or break your living experience. Of course, landlords are willing to prioritize people who are willing to pay more or someone who is willing to buy the furniture in the apartment, but negotiating is always worth a try. Shout out to my father for teaching me and my sisters a key lesson, and that is there are two things you must negotiate: your rent and your pay. No ifs, ands, or buts, because they can lower your rent and they can pay you more. If you're not willing to ask for it, then you won't get it. And if they say no, then maybe this place isn't for you, especially if it's out of your pay range. That's what I was thinking, like, okay, this apartment's really beautiful, but if he's not gonna lower my rent, then it's not meant for me to be here, and that's okay. These are all the things that you definitely need to have, so when you are filling out your application, there will be no problems, it'll be nice and smooth, and you can get your apartment. What I did learn when I was doing the application process is there's no security deposit fee. If you're someone who signs an application, it goes through, and then you decide you don't want the apartment anymore on the last day and you're like, you know what, I gotta go, they can charge you $200, so you do sign this piece of paper. That's what I noticed on 2 of the applications. I was collecting applications, but I wasn't filling out all of my applications. And for this apartment, they had that. And then for another apartment I was really interested, they had that. They went through the effort of processing your application when someone else could have had that apartment easy. There is something called a finder's fee, which I wasn't charged, but that is something that I did have to read on. I feel like I got majority of the basics down. I didn't go into depth about Hydro-Quebec though. Hydro-Quebec is your electricity bill. You can go to hydroquebec.com and type in your address, sign up, create a profile. Another thing that's super good about Hydro-Quebec that can help you forecast how much you're gonna be spending each month is you can type in any address and it will show you approximately how much you'll be paying each month for hydro. So I will have that website also linked down below in the description box. That is it for my apartment hunting process and all the tips and tricks that I have for y'all. And I hope that this inspires you to go forward with your moving process, or it makes moving a little bit easier for you having all of these little tips and tricks in one video. Yes, if you like the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.